Why do I like crewing with Terrans? Yeah, I have been asked it a lot. Yes, they do smell. Their food is oddly spiced. And yes, they do secrete things from almost every surface of their bodies, even if they don't realize it. There's a reason I wear gloves when I shake their hands. Yes, of course I shake their hands. No, I don't know why they like shaking hands. It's a culture thing. I don't mind it though. Oh right. The reason I hang out with Terrans. Irrational, right. Zetishan. What's Zetishan? Oh, fair enough. Well, were you alive during the Gothian Muruk War? You were. Good. Heard of the Battle of Meta 410? No. How about the Crisis of Mitarja? Oh good. Well, I'm from Mitarja, and that crisis was caused by the Battle of Meta 410. How? Well, I was getting there. See, during the battle, one of the Gothian scatter carriers got hit by a rail flechette from one of the Muruk ships. Luckily for it, it had already dropped its scatter drones, so it didn't have any good reason to stick around. So it did the logical thing, charged up its trans drive, and began to initiate a jump out of system. I'm getting there. Relax. Anyways, it makes to jump right. It gets to about 95-ish% of jump status. Begins pulling up its inertial dampeners for it. Literally as the what? Ish. Oh it's a Terran add-on for words that imply that they're close to being accurate. Oh. Glad you like it. Feel free to use it. Like I was saying, the captain's tendril is hovering over the button to initiate the jump. And right as their little tendril begins descending toward the screen, another flechette hits their ship. And it does so, right in their trans drive. They initiate the jump. The ship still hasn't processed what happened, so they make it. And only a split second, their time, later they crash back into the material plane. And crash right into Mitarja at relativistic speeds. Just like that, most of our planet's crust destabilizes. Most of our ozone cooks away. Our axis gets tilted about 10 degrees. I mean, it was a fucking carrier for Blorg's sake. Damn thing was bigger than most exoplanets and moons. The Terrans. Like I said, I'm getting there. In fact, they're the next part. So, our planet had been approved for tourism by the coalition about, 0.3 rotations before I was born. And as you know, Terrans will travel anywhere on vacation. So naturally, we had some on our world. One of those Terrans saved my life. To this day, I do not know their name or what happened to them after. Wish I did. All I know is that one second, my progenitor and I were walking along to go somewhere. Then the planet shook. Then I woke up under some rubble, with my legs pinned under some structural bars. Naturally, I was scared out of my mind. I was only about 1/10 of a rotation old after all. Barely out of my hatchery days. So I was crying and wailing and thrashing my sounders as loud as I could. Unfortunately, nobody else around me seemed to be, so I was probably one of the few survivors in my area. Don't know. Didn't stick around once that changed. Anyways. It's about 2 days later. I'm running out of water in my hydrative membrane. I'm hungry. And my legs have been numb for about 3 hours. Then I start hearing this voice. It isn't a Tarjan voice. It isn't their sounders, young or adult. That's right, it was a Terran. They'd been on the planet when the crash occurred too. I don't know how they survived when nearly 90% of my people hadn't. It's not like they're any tougher than we are. But this one had. They could have, and most other sentients would have, just holed up in an intact building or out in an open field and just activated their traveler's beacon. And they did activate it. But they couldn't just stand by. They couldn't just let people, even my people, stay in danger wherever they were. So, they activated their beacon. Then they began searching for survivors. That was how they found me. They heard my crying and thrashing and came running over. A few minutes and a lot of hard work on their part, and they had me out from under the rubble. Once I was out, they carried me, heavy as I was as compared to them, to a lift station that had managed to survive the event. Then they dropped me off with my people and they set back out. I remember the other Tarsians telling them to stay in where it was safe, that they'd already activated their beacon and needed to stay where it would lead the recovery ships for their people. And I remember the Terran telling them that it had already activated the beacon for its friend who had died in the crash and had left it there in the shelter. The adults asked what good that would do. And the Terran just smiled and walked out the door. I never saw them again. And now in my older, wiser years, I realize how pained that smile had been. A few hours later, a Terran ship landed and sent in rescue crews. My people tried to tell them that the person who'd activated the beacon was outside somewhere, looking for people. And the Terran rescue crew said they knew and that they were there for us. That was how I left my homeworld and became a member of what my people now call the Lost. Yeah. I could settle on Katarsia or Batarsia. Maybe even Kiratarsia if they ever get that damned corrosion issue fixed with the gas exchangers. But living in Habdomes? No thank you. But that'll be someday when I'm finally ready to stop being one of the Lost. Well, wait a second. I'm not done. See, that was only what made me curious about Terrans. I didn't get to like them until I was grown and able to travel on my own. I did some research on them. But it was kinda hard to separate the shit that was fake from the real stuff. Terrans have an expansive amount of photorealistic fiction movies. So, I joined the Vacuum Welders Guild. Did a few portions of a rotation, getting my skills up. Then when I had a chance, I joined the crew of a multi-species transit ship. One that I had insured had a significant portion of its crew from Terra. But still enough of its crew who weren't Terran that I could still fit in. And the Terrans did not disappoint. They had their bad hatches, same as any other species. A few of them that I'd send out an airlock naked if I was a worse insect. But they looked out for each other. And when I say that, I don't mean just Terrans. I mean they looked out for the crew and their passengers when they could. Captain Federane, Sherai's Federane that is, was a cold bitch. Saw her execute a man with her own sidearm when he was found trying to sabotage the ship's engine in an attempt to assassinate a Drekan ambassador who was using our ship to go on vacation. Kicked the legs out from under the also Drekan bastard and punched a plasma shot right through the back of his thoracic brain. How's that endearing? It's not. I'm just trying to show you how hard of a ship's captain she was. I also saw her divert the ship mid-jump because we'd gotten a Q message from an emergency beacon. A Denari science vessel that had gotten too close to a star for its own good despite the second officer's warnings and got lashed by a flare. She ran our ship so close to that star that we were pulling off fuse plating for a month after. And she and the other Terrans had to undergo radiation treatment for almost a year. But she saved that science vessel. And neither she nor any of her long-term crew so much as hesitated to do it. I almost did. But my crew chief read the intent on my face and damn near killed me with just the expression on his face. Yeah, it was a suicidal thing to do. And that Terran that saved me on Matarja. Even as a child, half-starved and dehydrated almost to death. I could tell that they were beat up worse than I was. And they still went back out into the wasteland to look for more people to save. Anyways. Few trips later, and about 3 trips before my contract was up, our ship gets wrecked. How? Seriously, I will get there. You know the rumors of you pin boys being impatient is spot on. Yeah, I know. Pin relations. It's a damn mouthful though. Like I was saying, our ship gets wrecked. Bad luck is all. Quantum plane of our landing site flattened out in the wrong spot, thanks to an asteroid strike changing one of the positions of a nearby moon by a billionth of a percent. Screwed up the trans-drive calculations by fucking up the system's gravitational topography. And we ended up reverting to real space right in the middle of the field that asteroid had originated from. Coulda happened to anyone. Before we knew it, our ship had enough holes in it to qualify as a net. 80% crew loss. Only the people who were lucky enough not to get blasted by asteroids and debris survived, and even then, only if their seat pod successfully deployed. Luckily for me, mine did. So, I got my suit on, had the pod reroute its air supply to whoever needed it, and then it was my turn to save them. The Terrans, what few were left, were goddamn machines. And no, I don't mean cyborgs. Although a few of the crew, myself included, do technically count. I mean they didn't stop. I was the only qualified union vacuum welder that survived the event. Didn't matter to the Terrans. If they were up and moving, then they were patching the ship. Either with emergency patches or by doing welds just good enough to hold until I could get to them. They worked non-stop. I had to take breaks every 18 hours or my brain would have put me in forced hibernation. The humans, according to their own medical research, need at least a few hours of sleep every 36 hours or so. Apparently, not when shit needs to get done. At least it was what the XO, who the accident had made the new captain, had told me. They worked tirelessly, never complaining in a way that was serious, never growing upset when myself or the other non-Terrans needed sleep. They also sacrificed. They hid injuries in favor of continuing the work, refused medicine so that it could be given to those they deemed more deserving of it. And when atmosphere reserves grew low and things were looking grim, they were the first to offer to take cryomeds and risk vacuum-induced stasis in favor of keeping the essential personnel alive and functioning. And as you know, human vac stasis is risky. With only a little better than a 1 in 3 chance of emerging from it, not only alive, but without lasting injuries, some of which last the rest of their lives. And that's not even talking about the pain of the process. I mean, intentionally subjecting yourself to vacuum, hoping the drugs do their job. I was glad that I couldn't hear their screams as they did it. And I felt terrible knowing that I was one of the handful of crew members that they considered essential enough to take that risk for. But at that point, I'd been working with the crew long enough to understand their reasoning. And to trust them. I still trust them. We lost a lot of crew because of that. The accident and the vac stasis. But, a few days worth of work later, the ship's reactor powered back up. It wasn't in good shape. But it ran. And we had enough shielding between us and it that the leaks it had were survivable. And a day after that, we had atmospheric processors back up too. Also rough. But working. Few hours later, we managed to patch the few holes that we couldn't find without pressure. And that was enough to survive until a pickup could get to us. Sadly, that also marked the early end of my contract with them. Captain dead, ship dead, most of the crew dead, lost shipment, and a few dead passengers. Yeah. Company gave me my union-mandated credits and I was back on the market for a ship again. So, why do I like Terran so much? Well, that's easy. It's because even if they don't know you that well, as long as you aren't their enemy, then they've got your fucking back. Author's name and the link to original text is in the description. Consider tapping the thumbs up and pressing the subscribe button if you enjoyed this video.